Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Patrick Larier and I am the Chairman of Quickstep Holdings Limited. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this AGM. In the view of the unprecedented times we find ourselves in, caused by COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being held in a way that shareholders and their representatives can participate safely via webinar. I'm advised there's a quorum is present and the time is now 2 p.m. and I declare the meeting open. I'm joined today by my fellow directors, Mark Burgess, the Managing Director here, Leanne Hayward, Non-Executive Director, Elizabeth Manns, Non-Executive Director, Kim Osley, Non-Executive Director. Also present is our Company Secretary, Gillian McGregor, and Tracy Driver from KPMG. In addition to this, we have some senior management present, David Durrell, Tim Gent, Jackie Courtney-Pittman, and Gary Robinson, as well as Alan Tilley, our CFO. Nearly forgot him. There are no recorded apologies for this meeting. The annual general meeting was dispatched to members on the 19th of October this year. I intend to take the notice of meeting of the annual general meeting as read, and as well as the explanatory statement. As previously advised, this is a virtual meeting and shareholders will be able to participate and view a live webcast of the meeting, ask questions and cast votes via an online portal whilst the meeting is in progress. The format of today's meeting will be firstly for me to give a chairman's address and then to consider and vote on the proposed resolutions as set out in the notice of the annual general meeting. I will propose the resolution and then ask if there are any questions. Questions can only be asked in direct relation to the resolution put to the meeting. A poll will be conducted on all resolutions. We will open the poll when the resolutions are being addressed, and shareholders and their representatives will be able to vote on the resolutions as and when they are being addressed. If you have any questions in relation to any of their resolutions, please type your questions into the question box on your screen. Mark Burgess, our Managing Director, will then present a general overview of the company's current business activities, and then shareholders will be given an opportunity to ask general questions. Time permitting, we'll cover as many questions as possible. I will now provide my chairman's address. And before we get to the formal part of the meeting today, I would like to introduce myself and say a few. Later in the meeting, Mark Burgess, our Managing Director, will report on more detail on the company's progress and outlook. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the exceptional way that Mark and his team have handled the COVID pandemic. The business has not skipped a beat, notwithstanding the challenges of running a people-intensive manufacturing business with a long global supply chain and complicated machinery that requires specialist servicing. Not an easy task, but one that has been very well done to the benefit of all shareholders. While my CV is in the notice of meeting, I would like to briefly introduce myself. I'm a chemical engineer by training and have spent my whole career in industrial, chemical and technical businesses. This included 10 years with Shell International in Cape Town and London. After moving to Melbourne in 1992, I spent 15 years with ICI and Orica in a variety of senior management roles. In 2007, I took the role of Managing Director of Ludovisi Limited, a mid-sized ASX-listed company. This business had significant operations across 5 continents, designing, manufacturing, supplying, and servicing equipment for the global mining industry. Over 5 years, the business expanded rapidly through both organic growth and some targeted acquisitions. In 2012, Ludovisi was subject to a contested takeover and was eventually sold to the Danish company FL Schmidt. After completing my 2-year contract with FL Schmidt, I embarked on a new career direction as a non-executive director and have enjoyed making to a variety of companies over the last 6 years. When I was originally approached to consider joining the Quickstep board, I started doing my due diligence on the company and was intrigued by the business, its position in the market, and the potential growth prospects. I was delighted when I was offered the role, and since joining the board nearly a year ago, have not been disappointed. The announcement we made last week about the acquisition of the assets of Boeing Defence Australia's aerospace maintenance, repair and overhaul capability based in Tullamarine is a case in point. This opportunity has been developed over a considerable period by Quickstep. This ultimately bore fruit when Boeing decided to sell the business, and we were prepared to grasp the opportunity. Mark will cover in some more detail this acquisition. We will continue to pursue opportunities with the aim of growing Quickstep and its profitability in an organic sense by building market share in our traditional markets, using our technology and manufacturing capabilities. In addition, we will remain vigilant to identify any potential acquisition opportunities. Tony Quick, my predecessor as chair, made a huge contribution to Quickstep, and I would like to thank him for this. Over many years, he nurtured the business from a loss-making startup to the business it is today, where we are profitable and have exhibited strong growth over the last 3 years. In addition to this, the board renewal process. This process has created a board of great diversity in skills, background, and experience. Leanne and Liz entered in 2019 before last year's AGM, so you've already met them around this time last year. I was appointed in December 2019, and in June 2020, we were fortunate that Air Vice Marshal Kim Osley agreed to join the Quickstep board. Kim will introduce himself a little later in the proceedings. In August, Gillian McGregor was appointed as Company Secretary. I would like to welcome Gillian and thank James Pinto for the long, tireless service he provided to Quickstep as Company Secretary over many years. With the board renewal process largely completed, Tony decided to retire from the Quickstep board at the end of August, and I was privileged to be elected chair by my fellow directors. Quickstep's board is fortunate to have a very capable management team led by Mark Burgess. Mark knows both the industry and the business very well, and together with his team has provided great continuity to the business during this period of board renewal, as well as being a key contributor to building the profitable and growing business that is Quickstep today. I believe that the environment that Quickstep is currently operating in is conducive to building an increased sovereign capability in Australia, and this, together with our global customer base, is expected to present the company with future opportunities which we will work diligently to capture. This brings to an end my introductory remarks, and we will now move to the formal AGM proceedings. We are now moving to the voting and poll procedure. Computershare is our share registry. Voting at today's meeting will be conducted by them via an online platform. For those entitled to vote at today's meeting, if you have not already done so, please log into the online voting portal as provided in the notice of meeting. The online voting guide is provided on the screen. As previously notified, voting on all resolutions today will be conducted by a poll. In order to provide you with enough time to vote, I will shortly open the voting proceedings. At that time, if you are eligible to vote at this meeting, a new polling icon will appear. Selecting this icon will bring you up a list of resolutions and present you with voting options. To cast your vote, simply select one of the options. There is no need to hit submit or enter button as the voting automatically is recorded. You have the ability to cast and change your vote on all resolutions up to and until the time I declare the voting closed. Following the confirmation by Computershare, the final poll results will be announced to the ASX later today. If you have lodged a valid proxy form in either hard copy or online prior to the meeting, you do not need to vote again during this meeting. Your votes will have been already been recorded, and you are included in the proxy results. Before any resolution set out in the annual general meeting is put to vote by members, a total number of proxies that have been received on behalf of the company on on or before the deadline of the notice of meeting in relation to each resolution is set out on your screen. I've now put up all the proxies for the various resolutions. The poll is now open, and you may cast your votes while we go through the formal business section. It is intended to keep the poll open until after our Managing Director's presentation in order to give you time to lodge your votes. Please note that in relation to open proxy, I, as Chairman, intend to vote in favour of all resolutions. The first item of business on the notice is to consider the financial statements of the company for the financial year ended 30th of June 2020, together with a declaration by directors, the directors' report, the remuneration report, and the auditor's report. I ask that any questions and discussion are confined at this stage to these documents and the conduct of the audit. There will be an opportunity later in the meeting to ask questions of a more general nature. If you have any questions, if you do, please type your questions in the box on your screen. I'll just check with Mark whether any questions have come in for this section.
There are no questions.
Given there are no questions, I now move to Resolution 1, which is to consider and have thought fit to pass as a non-binding resolution. And the resolution is that for the purposes of Section 250R(2) of the Corporations Act and for all other purposes, the remuneration report as contained in the company's director's report for the year ended 30th of June 2020 be adopted. The proxy results are on the screen in front of you. Does any shareholder have any questions or comments about the remuneration report? If you have any questions in relation to the resolution, please type them in the question box on your screen. Are there any questions, Mark?
There are no questions on that resolution, Patrick.
The poll is open, and you may cast your votes on this resolution in the manner described earlier. I will now pass the chair to Leanne Haywood for consideration of Resolution 2, as this resolution concerns my re-election as a director of the company.
Thank you, Patrick. I move to Resolution 2, which is to consider and, if thought fit, to pass an ordinary resolution that Mr. Patrick Larier, a director of the company who retires in accordance with Clause 13.5 of the company's constitution and offers himself for re-election, be re-elected as a director. The proxy results for this resolution are as shown on the screen. Does any shareholder have any questions or comments about this resolution? If you have any questions, please type them in the questions box on your screen.
There are no questions for that resolution, Leanne.
Thank you, Mark. The poll is open, and you may cast your votes on this resolution in the manner described earlier. I return the chair to Patrick Larier now that Resolution 2 has been considered.
Many thanks, Leanne. I'll now move on to Resolution 3, which is to consider and, if thought fit, pass the ordinary resolution that Air Marshal Kim Osley, a director of the company who retires in accordance with the Clause 13.5 of the company's constitution, self-re-election, be re-elected as a. Once again, the proxy results are on the screen in front of you. I'll now ask Kim to introduce himself briefly.
Thanks, Patrick. Ladies and gents, good afternoon. The majority of my working life has been either in defence or in supported defence through my various employment and defence aerospace in particular. I joined the Air Force straight out of high school, actually, back in the late 1970s, and enjoyed many years of flying fast jets, the F4 Phantom, F111 and the F18 latterly. However, in the past 20 years, I think I've also gained the skills and experience of greatest relevance to Quickstep. I was the program manager of the Australian F-35 program, a $17 billion program And of course, the F-35 is currently the largest source of revenue for Quickstep. I was also a head of defence staff in Washington, where I was Defence's senior representative in the US, and I had about 400 staff. A key part of that job was engaging with the US primes and with US industry and promoting Australian industry defence exports. Yes. I still work part-time in the Royal Australian Air Force Reserve, and I'm a two-star officer in that role in Defence Industry Policy Division. In that role, I do promote defence industry exports, both locally and globally. Currently, I'm also a managing director in the management consulting and also a financial services firm of PricewaterhouseCoopers. And in this role, I support defence, and most recently was involved in the 2024 structure plan, which is about $270 billion of expenditure over the next 20 years for defence, and what the priorities might be in assigning that $270 billion. I'm delighted part of the board at Quickstep, and I certainly look forward to applying my unique skills and experience to the strategy that has been developed. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Does any shareholder have any questions or comments about this resolution? If you have any questions, please type them into the box on your screen.
There are no questions for Resolution 3, Patrick.
Thank you. The poll is open, and you may cast your votes on this resolution in the manner described earlier. I'm now going to move to Resolution 4, which is to consider and, if thought fit, to pass an ordinary resolution that Mrs. Elizabeth Manns, a director of the company who retires by rotation in accordance with Clause 13.2 of the company's constitution and offers herself for re-election, be re-elected as a director. Again, the results of the proxies are on the screen. Now Liz will introduce herself briefly. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Patrick. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself today. I'm an experienced executive with a career that has spanned both industrial and fast-moving consumer goods industries. I've worked for over 20 years across Europe and in the last 14 years here in the Australasian market. In addition to my non-executive role for Quickstep, I'm also the Executive General Manager of CHEP Australia, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of ASX-listed Brambles. I believe I bring a depth and breadth of skills and experiences to the Quickstep board. These skills include business strategy, P&L management, human resources, operational excellence, and advanced manufacturing. I have a strong compliance focus with a deep knowledge of the practice of quality assurance and health and safety management. I am a chartered engineer by profession and a fellow of the UK Institution of Mechanical Engineers. I also hold an MBA. As Patrick said earlier, I joined the board of Quickstep just over a year ago, and I have been incredibly impressed by the Quickstep management and their focus on innovation, growth, and the delivery of stakeholder expectations. I have been very proud to be a part of this business over the last year, and I would therefore like to offer myself for re-election.
Many thanks, Liz. Does any shareholder have any questions or comments about this resolution? If you have any questions, can you please type them into your question box now?
There are no questions for this resolution, Patrick.
Thanks, Mark. The poll is open, and you may cast your votes on this resolution in the manner as described earlier. I'll now move to Resolution 5, which is to consider and, if thought fit, to pass as an ordinary resolution. That for the purposes of ASX Listing Rule 10.14 and for other purposes, approval is given for the grant to Mr. Mark Burgess of 4,629,630 rights under the Quickstep Incentive Rights Plan as described in the explanatory statement. Again, the proxy votes are shown on the screen under Resolution 5. Does any shareholder have any question or comments about this resolution? If you have any questions, can you please type them into your question box now?
There are no questions for this resolution, Patrick.
Thank you, Mark. The poll is open and you may cast your votes on this resolution in the manner described earlier. We are now moving to the sixth and final resolution. I now move that resolution 6, which is to consider and, if thought fit, to pass as a special resolution, that pursuant to and for the purposes of ASX Listing Rule 7.1A and for all other purposes, shareholders approve the issue of or the entry into arrangements to issue equity securities representing up to 10% of the issued capital of the company, calculated in accordance with the formula prescribed in ASX Listing Rule 7.1A.2 on the terms and conditions as set out in the explanatory statement. Once again, the proxies are listed on the screen in front of you. Does any shareholder have any questions or comments about this resolution? If you do, please enter them, type them into your question box now.
There are no questions on this resolution, Patrick.
Many thanks, Mark. The poll is open and you may cast your votes on this resolution in the manner described earlier. I'll now hand over to the Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director, Mark Burgess, to provide a brief overview of the company's operations. Just so you know, the poll is still open and you may cast your votes during the presentation. Mark?
Thank you, Patrick. I'd like to add my welcome to that of Patrick. It is great in many respects to be conducting this year's AGM from our main site and company headquarters here at Bankstown, albeit disappointing that shareholders cannot join in person. It's now almost exactly 3.5 years into my role as CEO of your company, and this will be my 4th AGM as your CEO. You will note the continued expansion of our product and service offering with the forthcoming addition of aftermarket services to our business portfolio. I will cover the recent acquisition in more detail later. Over the last 12 months, we have made significant progress in developing our position within commercial aerospace, not just in supplying Lockheed Martin's LM-100J commercial program, but now also developing pathways to the qualification of AeroCure as a manufacturing process with Spirit Aerosystems and a European aircraft OEM. And of course, the recent announcement of Quickstep Aerospace Services being established following our asset purchase agreement with Boeing for their Tullamarine facility, which opens up another avenue of growth in the commercial aerospace market. Our customer portfolio, platform and program scope continues to grow and reflects the very strong reputation we are continuing to build in the global composites market. In the images that you can see across the bottom of the screen right now, there are a number of aircraft programs there that would not have appeared this time last year, demonstrating that continued expansion of our program portfolio. In terms of our FY20 performance, FY20 was another year of great progress for your company, with yet another year of record revenue, record EBITDA, and record NPAT performance. A significant departure from where we were in FY17 and FY18. For an industrial business in the aerospace segment, our compounded annual growth rate of almost 17% in organic revenue alone from FY17 to FY20 compares favourably to global aerospace and defence growth over that same period, which, subject to which data set you're looking at, averaged 3 to 5% over the same period. The continued climb from substantial losses to consistent improvement in profitability over the last 3 years, I think, speaks for itself. Our specific performance for FY20 can be seen here on the slide in front of you. As I've said, record performance across many of our key metrics and admirable resilience in the face of both public health and supply chain challenges presented by the COVID pandemic. But what for me is even more important on this slide is the achievement of new contract wins that you can see listed there, and particularly the positioning for future growth, especially in commercial aerospace and aftermarket services. This is part of a comprehensive and very deliberate strategy that has been evolving over the last 2 or 3 years. With the impact of COVID-19, we deferred our annual strategy process from May, June of this year to October, November, just recently completed. This has allowed us to take into account the potential impact from the pandemic, both here and across our global market. I'll let you read both what was posted on the ASX and what you can see in front of you, the vision and value statements that we worked to, and you can see on your slide. But I'll draw your attention to the critical features of our strategy going forward. Absolutely a focus on continued growth, yes, but a greater focus on new markets and improved margin mix from our portfolio of programs and those new markets. We believe we already have a good position in a great market, that market being aerospace composites. And our growth plan will focus on accessing more attractive market segments and progressively developing good positions in those markets as well. You can see from the market data presented here, and it's worth noting or calling out particularly that this is after the impact of COVID-19 is factored in. The medium-term growth in the aerospace composites market is expected to remain strong. The expected 7.5% CAGR suggests the enduring resilience of a market that was so heavily and continues to be so heavily impacted by the pandemic. Of additional note, and this will become more relevant when I touch on strategy in a moment, but of particular note is that this market data doesn't include electrification of ground and air transportation or space applications. In simple summary, we look at our future growth plans across a conventional 3-horizon model. In the first horizon, we plan to utilise the tailwind of Australian defence expenditure to continue the kind of growth rates in defence aerospace that I mentioned before and that we've seen over the last few years. But now with the new and exciting dimension of maintenance, repair, overhaul and upgrade added through our Quickstep Aerospace Services business. In the second horizon, we plan to launch AeroCure into the commercial aerospace and advanced air mobility sectors, including continued exploitation of our new services offering for commercial jetliners, unmanned aircraft, and future air mobility in all its forms. In the third horizon, we plan to adopt early positioning in the rapidly developing segments of electrification of transportation, primarily ground and air transportation, and space. Given the importance of our recently announced acquisition, I will explain in a little more detail the addition of Quickstep Aerospace Services to the group. Developing this capability has been on our strategic roadmap for some time. It is highly complementary to our existing design, develop, and manufacturing business. The acquisition process has been underway for an extended period of time. Our transition and integration plans are well resourced and well advanced. Business development activities are moving on apace, and we plan to hit the ground running in the new year following completion. With the extent of current, new and planned acquisitions that have significant composite content, we anticipate a healthy domestic defence market with substantial export potential. We are preparing for a recovery in domestic flying, with borders continuing to progressively reopen in Australia. It's important to note that the Quickstep Aerospace Services business will have a particular emphasis on aircraft flying short haul and or domestic routes. This is the market which will see recovery first and in the greatest volume. The acquisition of the Boeing MRO capability and the development of Quickstep Aerospace Services is an extremely exciting development for Quickstep. It opens up the possibility of substantial additional growth in defence and commercial aerospace markets, as well as over the next decade in advanced air mobility. You will have noted from our recent release regarding the Boeing acquisition that we have withdrawn EBITDA guidance for FY21 due to the uncertain near-term outlook. We look forward to the successful integration of the former Boeing business and the launch of Quickstep Aerospace Services early in the new calendar year. Further, we expect the group to maintain the previously indicated top-line revenue growth. And of course, we will continue with our focus on conversion of our existing opportunity pipeline, particularly in the defence aerospace market. Thank you for your time and attention, and I'll now return the chair to Patrick.
Thank you, Mark. The floor is now open for general questions or comments. Are there any questions or comments on the management of the company? Please type any questions into the question box on your screen. And while Mark's looking for that, we will shortly be closing the poll. So if you haven't voted yet and you still want to, I suggest you do it now.
So, Chair, we have two come through. The first one from a shareholder, Peter Whelan, is when will the first dividend payment be made?
Thank you, Mark. Well, dividend payments are always considered by boards of companies to work out when it's appropriate to pay dividends, and the Quickstep board is no exception, so we will continually review the payment of dividends. I think it is fair to say that this company is a reasonably young company and we are planning to grow and invest to grow. So in the first instance, we will probably be reinvesting the profits of the company in the company. Having said that, as I mentioned earlier, we will continue to look at all times whether dividends are appropriate.
Chair, we have a further question. I think this probably you'll bounce back to me, but it's a question from Craig Lyons. How does Quickstep plan to raise its profile and market the success of the company amongst Australian finance commentators and ASX investors? Companies such as Carbon Revolution have tripled their share price since March lows and seem to receive significantly more coverage, whereas QHL media coverage and share price is still languishing.
You're 100% right, Mark. I think I'll flick that question to you.
Okay. Look, I think it's true to say in the Australian market, as a listed aerospace company, it's a fairly lonely existence. There are not many listed aerospace companies, listed defence and aerospace companies. We've invested a significant amount of effort in investor relations over the last 3 years. I would suggest that that's reflected well in the composition, that we've moved from a very low institutional level of holding to a much higher level of institutional holding. We were trading, and we did some analysis just prior to January the 31st, just prior to the pandemic. We were trading, our share price was trading in a range that I felt was much more reflective of the value of the business. However, along with almost all of the listed entities, there was significant impact negative to our share price because of the pandemic. We'll continue to work closely with current and future shareholders, with the broker community, the analyst community, to continue to explain the inherent value of the current business and the future of the business to address the financial story. More broadly, and this is an area that I think is particularly relevant when we think about the acquisition of the Boeing capability. Historically, the vast majority of our revenue has come from defence aerospace, where building your reputation for delivery, quality and cost, and marketing that predominantly through word of mouth has served us extremely well. But we're now moving into a phase where strategic communications with government and investors and marketing communications with customers, current and potential future, is going to be increasingly important. So over the next 6 months or so, you will certainly see us driving for a much higher profile than we've perhaps had in the past, and hopefully that will serve to put some wind in our sails with regards to selling what I think is a great Australian advanced manufacturing story. Hopefully that answered your question. Chair, we have another question that I think is coming straight back to me as well. Who are the main competitors to aerospace services?
Yes, Mark, you can answer that one.
Okay, so there are a number of maintenance, repair and overhaul providers in Australia and the region. It is globally a competitive market space. Less so perhaps on the defence side domestically, where we believe that the aerospace services business is a quite unique capability and one that we will invest in strong, build and project into the defence and the commercial market to ensure that not only do we compete, but we compete and win.
Thanks, Mark. Are there any more questions?
Yeah, there's a further question, Chair, from Frank Cooper. What revenues will Quickstep Aerospace Services add? Again, I'll have happy to cover that. Look, there is a very uncertain market environment, particularly in commercial aerospace, as we all know at the moment, with the near absence of commercial flights and its consequential impact across the industry. We expect that market to recover reasonably strongly in the relatively near future in Australia, given its substantial dependence on domestic flights, short-haul flights. But we're not guiding or providing any guidance for revenues for that business at this stage. We don't yet own those assets. We're still in the period between announcing the acquisition and completion, which we expect around the end of the year. But certainly as we progress through the next few months, the outlook for that business will become clearer and we will provide guidance at the appropriate time.
Thanks, Mark. Are there any further questions?
There are no further questions, Patrick.
Thank you very much. We've now considered all the resolutions set out in the notice of the general meeting, and we will provide shareholders with an additional minute or so before the poll voting closes, so you can complete any voting in relation to the resolutions. The company has not received, let me just check how long a minute is. The company has not received any other business, and that concludes the formal business for today. So, ladies and gentlemen, in the next 30 seconds or so, we'll shut the polls. And as there's no other business that can be brought forward at this meeting, I will shortly declare the meeting closed once we have shut the polls. So we'll give ourselves another 20 seconds or so, and then we'll shut the polls and shut the meeting. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I now declare the polls closed as well as the meeting closed, and thank you for your attendance, and we look forward to your continuing support.